How do you use social media to influence? I mean, not just get yourself out there, not just share a message, but to really have an impact and influence the world. That's what we're going to talk about today. I've asked Valerie Morris back for another amazing episode on influence, and I really want to pick your brain because I've got lots of opinions, especially about YouTube, but how do you use social media to actually influence people?
Okay, so the first thing that I always encourage people to think through is that first word in that joint word, or that joint phrase. Social media starts with the word social. So we always need to remember in the back of our minds that we are truly social beings and we're interacting with other real people. So when we're thinking about influencing people, it's not that we're blasting them with our agenda, it's that we're truly wanting to build a relationship with them. And I think if we get that first, we can really be successful in the future. Because if you bring the humanity into things, it's going to solve so many problems that people have when it comes to trying to make a difference and influencing people with social media.
So should a person be on multiple platforms? Should they start on one? I mean, what's your recommendation if somebody's like, you know what, I want to have more of a voice?
I think the biggest piece of advice I can give people is to really start with what they know they can handle. And so if that means just one platform, great. If that means 5 platforms, more power to you. You'll be living your life on social media if that's the case. I usually recommend around 2, maybe 3 that they're really putting a lot of emphasis on. And I like that because you can build a good audience there, but you also then have other platforms where you can cross promote and be able to mention the fact that you've got these other platforms. And so you can attract people from other platforms to go follow your YouTube channel. You can let them know that they have it. A friend of mine gave me this analogy of he was out fishing and they were at a youth camp when it was off hours, and they had all the fishing poles to themselves. There were no other kids that were competing to use these fishing poles. And so they each grabbed a couple poles and kind of set them up, and they all had the bait in the water. And he was like, why would I only fish with one pole when I can fish and put bobbers in with 4 or 5 poles and we have a higher chance of catching a fish? And it's the same thing with social media. You know, whether your bobbers are traditional marketing strategies or you're using multiple social media channels, the reality is if you have the ability to kind of fish in multiple ponds and put multiple bobbers out, you have a higher chance. So why would you just put all of your eggs on, in the basket of billboard marketing when you could be promoting on social media as well and reaching people in a completely new way? It just makes sense to use multiple channels to get your message out there.
So I have an idea to continue your analogy.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So let's say you've got 5 different fishing poles.
Yeah.
Maybe you could try at first to try 5 different types of bait or lures. Maybe 5 different depths or something.
Sure.
But then which one bites, right? Which one gets you the first bite, or which one brings in the biggest fish? And then you kind of can hone in like, you know what? This channel of social media really works.
Yes.
Or this strategy or this type of content. Because I really like that approach. It's like you don't know. It's always good to test things and to try things and to try multiple different things.
It is.
But then you can really be strategic. It's not that I've got to keep fishing 5 different poles for the sake of doing many.
Exactly.
Might as well do every one of them the most efficient way. That's my strategy. I love efficiency.
No, I think it's great. I mean, you always want to be testing whenever you're doing anything on social media. Really anything marketing wise, you want to be testing. But digital marketing now provides us some great opportunities to actually see what's working and what's not. And if it is working, why it's working. You can get so many clues just from the statistics and the data, but you want to be paying attention to all of those different pieces and elements so that you do know, hey, this is the best bait, and oh yeah, this is the right pond to be fishing in with this bait. It gives you clues as to what's going to work in the future. And with digital marketing today, you really need to be paying attention to those things. So whether you have 1 fishing pole out or 2 fishing poles or 10, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to what's working and what's not so you can make smarter decisions in the future, right? Isn't that the point? We're all wanting to work a little bit more efficiently and a little bit more smart in the future.
So when we're really talking about influence and making a difference, you mentioned trust.
Yes.
How do you build trust through social media?
Okay, so trust. We've got some big key stakeholders in our world today, like Brene Brown, who are really encouraging us to get vulnerable. And I've been seeing more and more people talking about how can we just show our real lives here on social media? Like, can we just be real? Your house is not this Instagram magazine worthy, photo shoot worthy setting all day long. The reality is you probably have a pile of dirty laundry or clean laundry that needs to be folded. You probably have dishes in your sink. You probably have, fights that you've had with your family in the last week. The reality is our lives are not perfect, but the more humanity we can show to people, the better off we will be. Because when people realize that there's a real person behind a brand and that person has real struggles, that they're not perfect, it allows other people to open up and be more real in return, and they're going to trust you a little bit more. If they know that maybe you've suffered the loss of a parent or a grandparent and you're dealing with that right now, they're going to connect emotionally with that. And they're more likely to be gravitating towards you and your content than someone else who is putting on this perfect persona of, hey, my life is great all the time and only perfect people are allowed to interact with me. We send those subconscious signals whether we realize it or not. And the more we can open up and be vulnerable, the more we're going to attract people who really are just like us.
So I have a story that I can share about my own experience that illustrates this point, and it also does open me up to vulnerability because I'm going to showcase a mistake that I made and the results I got from it.
Yep.
And then I'll showcase how I changed and the results I'm getting from it. So I've been a part of the National Speakers Association for about 6 years. My local chapter here is amazing. And back when I first joined the group, I thought, a whole bunch of prospective clients and customers. And I went with that attitude. And little did I know, and I'm so glad that I've joined that group in particular because they're such a giving group. Everyone there is really there to serve each other. I mean, they're making, most of them are multiple six figures, lots of them even seven figures, and yet they're there just serving, giving away their advice for free. And yet I showed up there, hey, you guys all need to buy from me. No one else showed up like that but me.
Sure.
And you know what? I got some customers out of it. I did get some customers out of the group, but I didn't become a part of the group. I wasn't family. Like, they all considered this tribe, this group family, and yet I totally felt like an outsider. And I recognized it early on, but I didn't have the right mindset. So a year later, you know what? I'm going to give this group a website for free. And back then I had a web design company, designed a website for the group. You know what? I did it because I wanted them to say, hey, look what Nate did. He's awesome. We should buy websites from him. And it's taken me a while. I'll just be upfront that it took me a while to really understand the value of showing up to serve and to showing up to give without wanting anything in return. Of course I want something, but in the last year, I've shown up to other groups where I've really just loved being a part of the group. I love showing up in a community, and I've given without expecting anything in return. And I'll share one thing specific. A friend of mine, Michelle, needed help writing scripts for some videos. And I set some time. We took like 6 hours, and I just helped her go through and write all these scripts. It's a painful process.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable in the sense that I got to help her, but it's not something that I typically enjoy doing.
Sure.
I didn't expect anything out of it.
Yeah.
Well, a few days later, we were both at the same conference, and she was dropping my name everyone about being a YouTube expert. And I was so grateful that I showed up and served, not expecting anything in return. And yet I just like, man, I love being loved. I love being loved. My point into going into all that story is I found both with showing up to serve and then being vulnerable, that I'm willing to share my mistakes. I've built some really close relationships. I'm really glad that you mentioned Brene Brown.
Yeah.
I've strengthened the relationship with my wife, with my friends. I've built closer relationships than I thought were possible with business associates and contacts, simply because I'm not afraid to show my mistakes. I mean, we're filming in a studio here. This is an Airbnb that we use as our studio, and we make it look nice. But the reality is that, we're not polished and perfect everywhere. We do have mistakes and flaws, and so I appreciate you bringing those parts up.
Yeah.
So you really do think that that's important for making an impact?
I think it's essential for building an impact. I mean, if you're not willing to go deep with people and be real, how are you going to expect them to be real in return? And if you're not out there building real relationships, what's the point? It's a pretty sad existence. And so, I don't know. I personally would rather have a bunch of real friends than a bunch of fake colleagues.
When you think about, just it kind of in summary of this topic, you think about celebrity endorsements of the past, and they still exist.
Yes.
But we're into a big transition now of real influencers. I mean, take somebody like Will Smith. Will Smith's a big celebrity, but he's been creating a personal brand now. He's got his own YouTube channel, and he's doing so many things right. Compare that to, I don't know, I don't want to pick on another celebrity, but just another celebrity that's never on social media or doesn't actually connect. If they were to like promote a product or something and say, hey, you should go do this activity, or it's like, okay, you know, but Will Smith talks about it, you know. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. I mean, think about it. Reality TV has become this huge thing in the last few decades. Nowadays, you get reality TV every moment on social media. And so if someone's willing to embrace that and go with, hey, people are wanting to see the real part of your life, you can really build a great audience, and therefore you have the ability to influence.
Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I've got 2 things I want to recommend. First is Valerie's book on Amazon, We're All Ears. And then the other thing is, if you really want to make a big impact on YouTube, you've got to do keyword research. I talked about that in other videos, but I have a resource I want to give you for free. It's my keyword research guide. So go ahead and click on the link below. You'll get that for free, and that will really help you build your influence on YouTube.
Yeah.